I have not yet met the man in room number 212, and I do not even know his name. He never patronises the hotel restaurant, and he doesn't use the lobby. And on the 3 occasions that we have passed each other by, we've not spoken, but just shared a cordial, non-committal nod. I would very much like to make his acquaintance, though. This is a lonesome, dreary place, and with the exception of an aged lady down the corridor, myself and the man in number 212 are the only guests here. However, I should not complain, of course. The utter quiet is exactly what the doctor prescribed. I wonder if the man in 212 is also here for a rest. I mean, I cannot believe that he is ill. He is very pale, but his paleness is not that of a sickly cast. It's rather wholesome in its ivory clarity, and his carriage is that of a man enjoying his very best health. He's tall and straight, and he walks with a brisk and athletic stride. And his pallor is no doubt congenital. He would tan in the winter sun. He must have travelled here by car. He was certainly not a passenger on the train that brought me here, and he checked in a short time after my arrival. I'd briefly rested in my room and was walking down the stairs when I saw him ascending with his bag. It's odd that our bellhop didn't carry his bag and show him into his room. It is odd, too, that with so many vacant rooms in the hotel, he should have chosen number 212 at the extreme rear. This building is long and narrow, 3 stories high, and all the rooms are on the east side, with the west being taken up by a decrepit business building. The corridor is long and drab, with stiff, bloated wallpaper that exudes a musty and unpleasant odour. The feeble electric bulbs that light it shine dimly as if from a tomb. Revolted by this corridor, I insisted vigorously upon being given number 201, which at least is blessed with a sudden exposure. The room clerk, a thoroughly disagreeable fellow with a Hitler moustache, was very reluctant to let me have the room, as it's usually reserved for the more profitable transient trade. I fear that my stubborn insistence may have made an enemy there. If only I'd been that assertive 30 years ago. I should now be a fully fledged professor instead of a broken-down assistant. I'm still smart from the cavalier manner in which the president of the university summarily recommended my vacation. No doubt he acted in my best interests. Those that dominate me normally do. Oh well. The rest probably will do me some good. And it is pleasant to be away from the university, and there is something positively gratifying about the absence of a graduate student's face. And if only it were not so lonely. I must devise a way of meeting this pale man in room 212. Perhaps I can get that clerk to arrange something. I have been here exactly 1 week, and if there is a friendly soul in this entire miserable little town, he has quite escaped my notice. The tradespeople, of course, are more than eager to accept my money, but they will studiously avoid even the most casual conversations. I fear I shall never be able to cultivate into their society unless I can somehow prove my ancestors came from here 150 years ago. Despite the coolness of my reception, I have, however, ventured abroad quite frequently. I rather cherish hopes that I might encounter the pale man. Incidentally, he's now moved into room 211. I wonder why he has moved there from room number 212. There certainly seems little advantage in moving one room nearer the front of the hotel. I noticed the change yesterday when I saw him emerging from his new room. We nodded again, and this time I thought I detected a certain malign satisfaction in his sombre black eyes. He must know that I'm eager to make his acquaintance, and yet his manner just forbids overtures. Well, if he wants me to go all the way, he can go to the devil. I am not the sort to run after anybody. Indeed, the surly diffidence of the room clerk has been more than enough to prevent me questioning him about this mysterious guest. I wonder where the pale man takes his meals. I've been absenting myself from the hotel restaurant and patronising the restaurants outside. At each, I have ventured inquiries as to whether they have ever served the man in 210. But no one at any of the restaurants has ever remembered him being there. Of course, the pale man must be difficult to please because he has changed rooms once again. He is now in 210. I am baffled by his conduct. If he's so desirous of a more conveniently placed room, why does he not simply move to room 202, which is the nearest available room to the front of the hotel? Or perhaps I can make his inability to permanently locate himself the means to starting a conversation. I see we are closer neighbours now, I could say casually. No, that's too banal. No, I must await a better opportunity. He's done it again. He's now occupying room number 209. I am intrigued by his little game. I waste hours trying to fathom its point. What possible motive could he have? I suspect he must be getting on the hotel staff's nerves. I'd ask our chambermaid / bellhop what she thinks of the whole thing and if she wasn't stone deaf. But at present I'm just simply too exhausted to undertake such a onerous conversation. I am, however, tremendously interested in the pale man's next move, for he must either skip a room or remain where he is, as there is a permanent guest there, a very elderly lady in room number 208, and she has not budged since I arrived here, and I have no doubt she has no intention of doing so. So I wonder, what will the pale man do? I await his decision with the nervous excitement of a devotee of the track the night before a big race. I do, after all, have little else to divert me. Well, the mysterious guest was not forced to remain where he was, and nor did he have to skip a room. The lady in number 208 made things far simpler by conveniently dying. The cause of her death is as yet unknown, but it's mostly been attributed to old age. I was one of a curious few who attended the funeral, and when I returned from the mortuary, I saw the pale man coming out of her room. So, he has moved in already. He favoured me with a smile that I have tried in vain to decipher. I cannot but believe that he meant it to have some significance. He acted as though there were a secret of sorts between us, a secret that I perhaps failed to appreciate. But then, after all, perhaps the smile was meaningless and only ambiguous by chance, like the Mona Lisa's. My man of mystery now resides in number 207. And I am not in the least bit surprised. In fact, I would have been more astonished if he had not made his schedules move. I've almost given up trying to understand anything about his eccentric conduct. I still do not know a single thing more about him than I did the day I arrived. I do wonder from whence he came. There's something indefinably foreign about him, about his manner. I should very much like to hear his voice. I imagine he must talk in the exotic tongue of some faraway place. If only I could somehow entice him into a conversation. Oh, I wish I was possessed of that glib assurance of the undergraduate student who could speak to the most distinguished celebrity without batting an eyelid. Yes, it's no wonder I only ever became an assistant professor. I'm worried. This morning I awoke to find myself lying prone upon the floor. I was fully clothed, so I must have collapsed there when I returned to my room last night. I wonder if my condition is in fact more serious than I had suspected. Until now, I've always been inclined to discount those who would regard me with long faces, but for the first time now I recall the prolonged handclasp of the president of the university as he bade me farewell. He obviously did not expect to see me alive again. Of course, I am not that unwell. Nevertheless, I must be more careful. Thank heavens I have no dependents, not even a wife. I was never willing to exchange the loneliness of a bachelor for the loneliness of a husband. I can say with all sincerity that the prospect of death does not frighten me. The speculation of what happens after death has always bored me. Whatever it is or is not, I'll just try to get along. I've been so preoccupied by this sudden turn of my own affairs that I have completely neglected to make note of the most extraordinary incident. The pale man has done an astounding thing. He has moved 3 rooms and gone straight to number 203. We are now very close neighbours indeed. We shall meet more often, and my chances of making his acquaintance are now that much greater. I have confined myself to my bed these last few days and had my food brought to me. I have even called a local doctor who I've no doubt was just a quack. He looked at me with professional indifference, advised that I should stay in bed and told me to avoid stairs. And for this service he was rewarded with £10, which he fished from my coat pocket at my direction. A pickpocket could not have done it better. He'd not been gone long when I was visited by our room clerk, who, with a great show of kindly concern, suggested that I might want to use the local facilities at the hospital, it being so modern and all. I told him, with more firmness than I had been able to muster in quite some time, that I was going to remain exactly where I am. Frowned silently, and then he stiffly retired. No doubt he's concerned that I'm going to die in his best room. The pale man is up to his old tricks again. Last night I tottered down the corridor, and the door of number 202 was ajar, and I looked in without thinking, and he was sat there. The pale man was sat there in a rocking chair, smoking a cigarette. He looked up into my eyes, and he smiled that same peculiar, ambiguous smile that has so puzzled me. I moved on down the corridor, and not so much puzzled now, but annoyed. The mystery of this man's conduct it's beginning to irk me. It's all so inane. It's so utterly lacking in any motive. I feel now that I shall never meet the pale man. But at least I am going to learn his identity. I am going tomorrow to ask for the room clerk, and I shall deliberately interrogate him.
I know now. I know the identity of the pale man and the meaning of his smile. This afternoon I summoned the room clerk to my bedside, and I said, Tell me the identity of the guest in room 202. The clerk stared at me uncomprehendingly. You must be mistaken. That room is unoccupied. Oh, but it is, I snapped with irritation. I myself have seen the man in there several times. 2 nights ago and all this. He's a tall man, very handsome and unusually pale. And he checked in the same night that I arrived. The hotel man regarded me as if I were trying to impose upon him. I assure you, sir, there is no such guest in this house. And as for him checking in the same day that you arrived, well, you were the only guest registered that day. What? But I must have seen him 20 times. It's a tall, pale man. He checked in. He was in room 212, and then he moved further down the corridor at each room, and now he's in the room next door. You're crazy, said the clerk, and he threw his arms up into the air, and I could see that he meant what he said. So I shut up and dismissed him. And as he left, I heard him rattling the knob of room 202, so I could see that he truly believed that the room to be empty. And as I know, and now I can understand fully the events of these past few weeks. And I understand the significance of the death in number 207. I even feel partly responsible for the old woman's death. Because, of course, I brought the pale man with me. But it was not I who fixed his path. Why he chose to approach me room by room down that dreary corridor. Why he chose to stop at the threshold of number 207. Those are mysteries that I cannot explain. I suppose I should have guessed his identity the night that he skipped 3 rooms and I fell unconscious upon the floor. In a single night of triumph, he came almost to my room. He will be coming by and by to my room. His ultimate goal. I suppose I shall now at last be able to return his grim smile of recognition. Meanwhile, I have only to watch and wait by my bolted door.